Hello and welcome to Talkin Jake, myself, Jake Storielli, BBD, as we talk about, oh boy, the all-disappointing team. Tough title. Scared to put it on a graphic. Don't think we're gonna, if I'm being honest, because we're too friendly with a lot of players and teams at this point. But yeah, I think for the social graphic, I think you're gonna see the 8 weeks to turn it around team. The YouTube's real. And these guys have had disappointing seasons, and I think they would tell you that. I think what sparked this thought, well, A, pretty normal thought. B, I think the Pete Alonso conversation kind of set me down this direction. I know Rosie and Plouffe talked about it. For me, I thought Pete did everything perfectly. Like, yeah, some people did get mad about the math there, but Pete did say close to 40 homers. So, like, he did everything perfect. And it was funny that this happened because on Monday, I think before this quote, there was a conversation in our lunchroom. I was talking with Jolly, and he was talking about how Alonso's season was a little bit down. He was kind of like, hey, if we had Pete Alonso's best right now, we may have passed the Braves. And I think that's an interesting argument, and that's the feeling a few Mets fans are having. But yeah, Alonso on the other side, on Pete's defense, if he does have, even if he has one good month at this point, like, what's a good month for Pete Alonso? Like, he could sneak up on 10 homers pretty easy. That his end-of-year numbers are going to look good, but he's got to finish strong. He's going to be an interesting one. If he finishes strong, we're going to be talking about a big boy Pete Alonso contract. Some GM is going to be able to pencil in 35, 40 homers a year on their whiteboard in their office. You can't find those guys easily. If Pete does limp down the stretch, it's going to be interesting to see what the final numbers look like and what he feels like. So that led me into the thought exercise of the all-disappointing team. Bum, bum, bum. I mean, part of me hates it, but part of me wants to talk about it with everything we did before the season with tier list, which we had a couple old wounds opened up looking at some of these players. Some bad wounds for us, myself and Jolly. Some bad wounds for the fans that were critical on some of the commentary. And man, I guess I'll tee it up before we do this one. A lot of Texas Rangers were eligible. Tough seeing that, huh?
Yeah.
After the year they won the World Series. World Series hangover. I might be like, I was on the bus for that, but I might be like chips on the table.
Part of what we loved about the 22 Braves is that they had enough parts in
right
from their championship, and Ronnie missed that run.
Ronnie, did they bring in who else? Was that Olsen for Freddie?
I think that's Olsen's first year.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'm all in until a team bucks the trend. The New York Yankees. Why is he always bringing up the Yankees? Saw that in the comments. And the guy should get partial credit. I talked more about the Yankees in the open last episode than I wanted to. Let's get into the beef of it. Start working in that phrase. Let's go around the horn. I feel like, wasn't there another team that it just felt like they had way too many candidates? Oh, there was a few Cardinals candidates.
A few Cards. No, not one Brewer that I for sure remember.
Yeah, let's dive in, and we start out behind the dish. That's where I always start out when I'm doing my baseball lists. And man, this one was a tough one for me because there was a clear winner. And it's why I teed it up for the Texas Rangers. It's Jonah Heim, man. We got really excited for this guy. He was massive switch-hitting catcher. Seemed like a big part of the Texas Rangers formula going forward. We kind of called it Rangers Devil Magic for a little bit because it was like, wait, they got this guy. They just got this guy. Let's see the official trade. With Dane Acker and Chris Davis for Elvis Andrus. Mm-hmm. An ugly February of 21 trade. He was in 2 trades before that, too. Was traded for Steve
He's traded
Pierce.
a lot.
And then Joey Wendell.
I believe Jolly did a short on that a year ago or so.
The moving parts of baseball. Jonah Heim, last year I just laughed because this popped up, but he was an all-star last year. He was on the All-MLB second team last year. Well, think about that. Like, we do All JM, which is dropping today as you listen to this.
Yeah, late this afternoon.
So think about that. And whether you agree with it or not, there was an argument that last year he was the second best catcher. He won the Gold Glove while being a switch-hitting catcher. 18 homers, 95 RBI. You guys know I'm still a little bit on the RBI bus. You need opportunities, but you need to drive them runs in. And Jonah Heim looked like he was a blossoming 28-year-old all-star, 106 OPS plus. Part of this vaunted Texas Rangers lineup that seemed like they were going to click year in, year out. Jonah Heim, 232, a 277 on-base percentage, a 623 OPS. And hey, I guess this is where I'll do our normal Talkin Baseball line. You guys know your team better than us. Is it something you're seeing, Rangers fans? Is there something going on? Or is it just baseball's a tough sport? Because this happens to guys. And again, for a lot of these guys, hopefully it's 1 year. Some of these guys have track records, and maybe that's the other thing I'll put out there right now. We heard from an exec, Lorenzo Cain had 1 year during his good baseball playing seasons that his numbers were just down, and they were like, oh, yeah, like he was super hurt. And it's like, oh, okay. So maybe these guys are fighting through something. You got a shoulder thing that popped up in May, and you just tried to play through it. That happens with guys. And then we get those end-of-season press conferences, and it's like, oh, Jonah Heim's shoulder surgery. And you're like, well, should we have... Remember when Jose Trevino played with
the wrist?
Played half a season with an injured wrist that required season-ending surgery?
You've been bothering him since spring.
Anyways, so Jonah Heim, sorry, my guy, but you have to be on the list. The backup options for catcher, I think, Beebs, you threw out I'm going to do some honorable mentions. I think you threw a Keibert Ruiz out there who needs to hit to play. Was
Negative WAR.
One of the big pieces in the Scherzer-Turner deal, if I remember correctly. And, yeah, he hasn't been not a lot of pet catchers popped up, which maybe that's a good thing, or maybe I didn't search hard enough.
Well, usually the catcher position, you can, if you're playing defense, you'll at least get enough WAR to not scream at us on this list.
And I guess that's the other thing that I should have got out in front of. A couple of these decisions weren't necessarily like worst player negative WAR. Like Gavin Sheets has some tough numbers. It's why it's the underperforming team. It's your expectations. I'm a big expectation guy. I don't know what I expected from Gavin Sheets this year, kindly. I know what I expected from Jonah Heim, and it was more than that.
Kirky's numbers, tough spot.
Kirky, but he's framing those low pitches.
Getting the WAR
He's about to get hot, and he is hot.
Threat.
As we move over to the cold corner, first base. Might start signature in that one. So when I started to wander into this thought process, I saw the Pete Alonso interview. I looked at some of the free agent upcoming class because I've done a couple check-ins on that to give you guys updates. Like, hey, if you're looking at your team, some of you guys, half your teams, you're starting to look at next year. That you might be looking at a free agent or what do we need at this position. Luckily for him, he's going to land on the honorable mention list and not the winner. My guy Rhys Hoskins, the numbers are in just a funky spot. He's very much in the territory. If this was a true 8 weeks to save your season, Reeser with a heater, like Jonah Heim, I don't think he can save his season at this point.
Yeah.
So that's
like all these guys, there's enough time to make it better. Like Reese can still.
Reese's numbers can still. He's got a positive OPS plus. He gets hurt by the defense. He's never rated out super well defensively. But he's got 19 homers. Like, Reese with a strong finish, his numbers are probably going to land where you'd expect them to land. He's basically a lock for 30 homers. But it was, 220 batting average, 305 on base. He's a lifetime 348 on base guy.
Yeah.
So everything I said about if he finishes strong, if Reese finishes in the bad place, his year numbers are going to be kind of tough to look at for a guy that we penciled in as a lock for 30 homers, a 350 on base, and OPS in the eights. Career OPS 835.
They're missing Yelly, so like that team kind of needs him to go and be an offensive hub of sorts.
And it's just tough because he's such clockwork that I was like, this is weird. We haven't talked about Reese in a while.
Yeah, and he had a nice start to the year, and we hadn't really talked about him since.
He's a Talkin Baseball favorite that I was like, He is not the winner. It is another NL Central first baseman. It's Paul Goldschmidt. Man, they slid him down the lineup. They keep waiting for it to click and happen. Every time there's a moment, it's like, wait, is Paulie coming? He had 3 hits and a homer against the Cubs. I think he's currently on an 0 for quick math, at least an 0 for 14. And this is on top of a season that, I don't know. We're 2 years removed from him winning. 2022, he won the MVP. Last year, he took, steps back, but it was still a 120 OPS plus, like 20% better than your average major leaguer. That's pretty solid. 88 OPS plus this year. Everything is down, obviously. That's how you get to those numbers. Oh boy, my computer just gave me one of those screens that you're like, my computer's about to not work for a little bit. Luckily, I know the second base position pretty well. Because this is where I think myself and Jolly have to eat just a little bit of gentleman's crow for now. Because on the second base list that we did have some contested players and topics on, we leaned into our guys pretty hard. Gleyber Torres, who had just come off a really strong hitting season for him. Like, he was league average. It felt a little better for that. And then he kicked into gear. That Gleyber had a top 3 hitting season out of the second base position, which that's obviously crazy valuable. Defensively, we've always had our issues with Gleyber, but it even felt like when Gleyber's comfy. You're not going to get too many highlight plays. He has his signature up the middle play. That when he's making that, it's a high level play. With the bat, he has been disappointing. With the glove, he has been disappointing. Base running wise, he's been disappointing. It's a contract year. Pretty brutal for my guy. And he'll win out, and maybe this is my bias. But across town, Jeff McNeil, who I know he's been moving around a lot. I actually had him in the util spot, so I guess a little spoiler. But I think I can move a guy that was my potential backup second baseman. McNeil, man, I don't know. Maybe the people were right. Maybe it's just near impossible to be a good contact hitter these days. Luis Arraez, go look where his numbers are right now. I think he's hitting 305, Mr. Worldwide. Pitbull, how about that news today? Bought the naming rights to FIU's football stadium. God, between the college football video game release, FIU being a classic NCAA program that you'd pick up on, because you can recruit in the state of Florida, classic bad team, let's have some fun with this one. Now they're playing at Pitbull Stadium? This would be one of those charts you look at, and it's like teams, NCAA football teams, FIU has gone up 655%. Because we're playing at Pitbull Stadium. And we are going to get some really good internet highlights from that. So get jazzy for that one. Like I said with Jeff McNeil, I mean, how are the good years and bad years looking at this point? Because Father Time, always undefeated. Man, he's hitting 239 this year. I mean, 2022, he won the batting title, 326 and 830, a 140 OPS plus. Like, Jeff McNeil was a baller. Last year, he landed around league average, and I think when me and Jolly talked about it, it was like, I still believe in Jeff McNeil. Like, he had a down year in 21. He had good years before that it was like, sometimes baseball happens, and that's probably it. I don't know. I can't confidently tell you what Jeff McNeil is at this point, but I know his last 2 seasons now, which we're talking 260 games, he's been a 96 OPS plus guy. So, I mean, with versatility and what he provides, there's obviously something there, but the Mets expect more. This whole Alonso thing, like, talk about Jeff McNeil. Pete's kind of been doing Pete stuff. McNeil ain't. So him and Glaber, who I remember being higher on our MLB tier list at the second base position on those two. Those two have come back to get us a little bit. So
a little bit. Jeff has been one-dotting for a month. He has been going.
I saw that he was turning around, and hey, if he keeps that up and his contact, a couple hits last night, like,
they're approaching league average territory again from where he was.
Who else has been hot for like a month? Gleyber Torres. So there's a way to find your way off this list by the end of the season, and I'm rooting for all these guys. How about that? Here's one that I'm glad I just said that sentence, because otherwise you might not believe me. Maybe the name that we got the most negative feedback from the fan base about this player, which was kind of mind-boggling to me because I like this player.
We like him, and I felt like we said really nice things about him in the tier list episode, and he landed in a good place on the episode.
And I think the other thing for me was I've oozed, I keep saying that, and that's not a phrase. I've oozed about the depth of the third base position and how much I love it. That we're in like a strong period of third baseman, who a lot of those guys are actually kind of having down years. When I tell you, I brought up Ke'Bryan Hayes' stat page today, and I was shocked. Shocked. A 586 OPS? And I mean, man, Pirate fans went in when we put Ke'Bryan on our tier list. Like, do you not know the second half splits from last year? There were Pirates fans, and this is why I like doing the tier list, and this is why I like having these discussions, and this is part of the reason we do all JM. When you watch your guy, you fall in love with them. You watch them every day. You might see the other guy for a series. Austin Riley, you might see him for a series.
And it might be a bad one from him.
And look where his numbers end up every year. Although, this year, not so much. But he's in a different planet than Ke'Bryan Hayes. I mean, I don't know how this was off the radar with all of the Pittsburgh Pirates, like, excitement this year between Skeens Day. O'Neal Cruz's numbers are in a fine spot. Brian Reynolds went on that hit streak, and he's been Brian Reynolds. 295 slug from Key. 295 slug. So, hey, I think he's still playing the hot corner well. I mean, this guy, 9 doubles, 0 triples, 3 home runs, 12 extra base hits. Like, guys are doing that in 2 weeks. So, hey, I still want out there. I like and support Ke'Bryan Hayes. But, man, I mean, these might be, of all the players we discuss, I think these are the ugliest hitting numbers. So, hey, thank God he still brings it to the other side. because you could argue, a couple of these other guys are lumping around out there. But, man, it's bad.
The Savant page, fielding run value, he's 79th percentile, which is good, but he's supposed to be a little better than that.
He's supposed to be honest. Like the 1-1.
He's supposed to be the next Arenado.
I might dig up tweets. Pirates fans got a little mean.
They were excessive.
Just got a little mean.
Base running, he's never been a base running guy, but he's more or less league average. Fine.
Sure.
Batting run value, first percentile. He ain't bringing it to the table, according to what Savant values.
That's tough, man.
Minus 18 batting run value.
So I'm sorry I had to do that to Key Bryan. It's kind of funny, man, for talking about baseball all the time, and you see a series or two where a guy's name pops up. Key Bryan was a big realization, like, we haven't talked about him at all. And there's a reason why. Hasn't been popping up in the box scores. And we took away the segment on our show where we talk about Slump Watch. The backup at third base, which very much is in a Rhys Hoskins lane, and that could have been for first base too. Jeimer Candelario, one of my favorite signings of the offseason. He's been incredibly streaky this year, and the numbers, they're in kind of similar to Rhys. Like, if Jeimer puts a couple months together, the all-in numbers are going to look okay. I think it's going to have felt not as good because he has been, he had one really hot stretch, but otherwise he's been a negative ball player. And I don't know. I don't know if that's juggling between third and first. Like, he kind of wasn't supposed to be their third baseman, and then Marte got popped before the season. Again, I don't know if that has any effect on him. But this one kind of hurt me a little bit because he came off as one of my favorite signings of the offseason. Switch hitter, can play corner infield, $15 million a year, which shouldn't really hurt a team. I guess if you're a lower market team, that $15 million needs to go somewhere else. But yeah, seeing where Jeimer's numbers had landed, let me bring him up instead of just saying Jeimer's numbers. But again, I wish I could show you what has happened to my computer because it looks like it's actually possessed right now. 100 games on the nose for Jeimer. And this is what it was, 226, 283. A lifetime, so he's a lifetime 320 on base guy. So you're missing 40 points there, and you're hoping that Jeimer is excelling or peaking. Like, he had a great year last year, an 807 OPS. It's a 96 OPS plus, so he has been hitting for pop a 437 slug. So when it's going, it's gone. 18 homers. This is a guy, if I'm doing my all save it team, which I probably do that 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out, him and Rhys, their season numbers can still land in the good place. Unlike a few of these other guys. Let me get one more splits page open on my guy, JJ Hilario, as Team USA beats up on Brazil right now. Jeimer, so yeah, he had an 894 OPS in June, 759 in May, which is okay, that's who he should be.
Fine.
562 in July, 659 April, March. He's gone off to a okay start this August. Compared to some of these other guys, there's a reason he's honorable mention, and Key Bryan is not. He's the guy. Shortstop, there wasn't a ton of action, which I say in a good way and a bad way. And hey, maybe you're at home yelling at whatever screen you listen to and subscribe to. Click that subscribe button. You know what I'm saying?
Podcast guys, check out the YouTube sometime.
The YouTube's great. Beebs has the hair going. I don't know what's going on. I've seen myself a couple times today, and I'll be honest, there's times I see it and I'm about it. There's times I see it and I am not locked in. For whatever reason, the facial hair played a little bit. We'll circle back on that. And this one I'm going to eat a little crow on because this is a guy I'm a big defender of. And speaking of Olympics, his wife going for a gold soon. Dansby. Dansby Swanson, man. I've become a Dansby defender, mostly because of his defensive work. That, there was a little while where all the convo around Dansby was like, well, his defense is going to fall off because he doesn't have a strong arm. And while that convo was happening, he was winning the Gold Glove. And it was like, hey, you know what? I really like the guy that's doing it instead of just daydreaming of him not, where I found myself becoming a Dansby Swanson defender. And he still has been playing good shortstop, or at least the numbies like Dan's. But I need my Dansby Swanson to be around league average at least to not be on this list. An 81 OPS plus. And I think I saw the number 9 home runs on the year, 35 RBI. That's a low number. 224 batting average, a 296 on base. And that's for a guy that is Dansby the biggest contract they gave out?
I think he's biggest on the team.
I mean, I think Hayward is when we do those jolly games.
Ever.
I think he's got the biggest Cubs contract, but
177. That might have.
So that might have got it. I mean, Dansby got paid. And those offensive numbers, you just can't have that.
Google, you gotta know I don't mean his Dodgers contract. 1 for 9.
No. That's tough. Although Jason Hayward, athletic.
8,184, so he beat it.
Okay.
AAV, it's Dansby.
For the expectation for Dansby Swanson, those numbers are not acceptable. The other option was kind of Arcia. Biebs threw that one out there. Again, I think there's a little bit less expectation from Arcia, but he went nuts last year. And actually, I take it back a little bit. He was nuts through the All-Star break, and then he came back down to earth. He actually had an OPS plus that fell under 100 last year, which is crazy to think about in that Braves lineup. But, it's still, for a shortstop, 741 OPS. He was 733 the year before in limited action. He was an all-star. That is what it is. And, I mean, for half a season, he balled out, which you take that. This year, Arcia, 77 OPS plus. Remember the whole conversation? Him, Vaughn Grisham. Arcia took over the job, was gangbusters. This year, he's just been bad. 226, 271, 638. But like I said, with the expectations of it, you expect Dansby to be providing on the offensive end. Arcia, like if you had to pick a shortstop that the rug might be pulled out from under this year, probably be Arcia. That's tough, huh? That's a little too, I'm on that. I didn't know. I wonder where he was in our tier list. Might need you to research that, Beebs.
Can do.
Ready for some egg on my face there. Dansby, let's go. Maybe Mallory gets the gold. Vibes are high. The Cubs surge from nowhere. Not buying it. Haven't bought in on the Cubs. Except I did pick their over on the over-under because I thought they would buy at the deadline. But they weren't good enough.
He landed in our third tier from the bottom.
Okay.
In a tier that we called Don't Look at This Line, Please.
Is that only him?
It's him, it's Trevor Story, and it's Tim Anderson.
Wow.
I think the
tough row.
I think that row was about like we're respecting your resumes.
Who's
but right
below
now,
them?
Right now, this is where you're at. Unknown rookies and the Kenny Pickett tier, which was your Javi Baez, your Nick Ahmed, your I think it's Paul DeYoung.
Okay,
they're out there just for their fielding.
Who are the unknown
prowess.
rookies?
Rocchio. I'm looking at an Oakland A, and Mason Wynn.
Is that Nick Allen? Who's their shortstop total?
It would have been Nick Allen for sure. They're below the hope tier of Abrams, Volpe, Tovar, Caballero,
yeah,
Pena, Neto, and Perdomo.
Wow. a clear line in the tiers there. And that's, you kids love them lists. Okay, spend more time on that than I thought. Let's go to the outfield. Because, man, there was another one that, like, had to be on the list. And I do think I'm going to do it as we do on All JM. You need a center fielder for the all-disappointing team. And then you need 2 corner outfielders. The 2 corner outfielders that jumped out the most to me are right fielders. But I do have the honorable mentions with them. So I'll start in center, and this one might sting or might not because it became a topic previously. I'm going with Julio. Some of Julio's numbers are okay. A lot of them are not. And this was the guy that there was MVP buzz coming into the season. It was like, hey, as long as he doesn't get off to that frigid start, Julio should be fine. He got off to the frigid start. He did the thing. Like Leo on the couch meme.
And then he had a worse June than the first 2 months.
Right. Like everyone was like, oh, he's coming out of it. He's coming up. He's not.
June's coming. Had his worst June.
100 games in, 11 homers, 18 stolen bases, a 372 slug for an 687 OPS plus, OPS. OPS plus, he's currently landing at 101, which again just proves that Seattle, what are we doing? Like, you guys need to do
some ballpark credit.
You guys need to do a Cleveland Guardians and take out a couple shelves so the ball goes, because I think you might break your players' spirits. Another number that jumps out, strikeouts, I don't care about if you're walking. Julio, 112 strikeouts to 24 walks. We got to work on that, Pop. That's a tier below where you need to be if you're the player you're supposed to be.
Like 27% strikeout rate. Would love it lower. It's not, there's a lot of guys above that on the list, but 5.8% walk. Not nearly enough with that strikeout number, especially.
And I mean, this was another controversial tier list guy, right? Everyone was mad.
I think Jolly really, most controversial on the show.
I fought to not put him on top, right?
Yeah. Jolly wanted him, as I recall.
I need to see it, man. And I think Seattle fans hit their tipping point a little bit this year of like, not only are we doing the slow start again, but we're here. Julio beat out Cedric Mullins for me. Cedric Mullins' numbers are down this year. Again, slightly different expectation levels. Julio, MVP. Cedric, you'd hope he'd be like in contention for an all-star or something. He has that a little bit of wiggle if something clicks. Oh, I just clicked Rance Mullenix page instead of Cedric Mullins. Rance Mullenix. I think I've done that before. I know a guy named Rance. How about that? Said he can get some of the counting stats into like he's got 19 swipes this year. If he could get the numbers to league average for what he provides defensively.
There's time to get it to league average rate stats and the counting numbers where you'd want him. It can become a fine season.
He was a guy I fought for more because he had a clear line in last season that his numbers went down after he got hurt. But this year he hasn't been it for Baltimore. That there was a lot of trade rumors for them for their center field position. Cedric can get back to okay, but it's definitely disappointing for a guy that, on the bad Orioles, he was the entertainment.
Cedric was in the third tier of center fielders.
He won't be there next year, I doubt.
I don't think so.
I doubt.
Judge and Trout were in the happy Ohtani's gone tier.
Yeah, sure are.
That was delicious.
Get out of here. They won't work for the freak. Sneaky Dark Knight, great line. Burns
Friedel
the
and
money.
Outman in the tier with Mullins.
Who?
That third tier was likable lefties, and it was Bellinger, Friedel, Mullins, and Outman.
Man, Mullins and Outman down. Friedel's been hurt a lot. Let's see if anything happens. Belly's kind of been Belly.
I don't hate that spot for where he's been. They're above the $100 million mystery box tier of Jung-Hoo Lee, Byron Buxton, and Jackson Chourio.
Jeez. Sheesh. Is Chourio figuring it out at all?
Yeah.
That's good. 2 WAR,
At least versus lefties, I think he's been really figuring it out.
Yeah. Chourio's numbers, yeah, okay. It's good for the crew. Let's do the 2 guys in the corners, because these 2 are frustrating just because they're such postseason stars. Nicky Castellanos, as much as I love anything he does or any clip we get out of him, negative WAR right now, 291 on base. OPS is almost 100 points down from last season. And it's just tough. He's got an every other year thing going on right now. 2021, All-Star, 939 OPS. First year in Philly, kind of tough, kind of sad. 694 OPS. Last year, he bounces back. He's one of the more consistent Phillies. 788. This year, he's back under 7 as we speak. Again, because he's played every day, some of the counting stats can find a spot, and there has been some pop, but just tough. Like year in, year out, you'd like to think Nicky C would be a little more consistent. Wouldn't be shocked if he does it in the postseason. Speaking of doing it in the postseason, Adolis Garcia was the guy, and it had a massive year. 39 homers last year. Got better every year, was entering felt like he was about to enter in a more elite level even. And he has gone the opposite direction. After that 39 homer, 107 RBI season, he's at 18-54, which those aren't too daunting, but a 209 batting average, 273 on base, a slug at 386. It felt like he was on the cusp of being kind of a known commodity for regular sports fans. Like, oh, that guy in Texas, he's roped up. He went nuts in the postseason last year. He's part of their formula. Unfortunately, he's part of the list of Texas Rangers that just ain't been it this year. The backups, whoa, bumps the mic. The backups for those 2. Alex Verdugo has entered the chat. Again, expectation was to be around league average hitter, if not a little more. Again, maybe that contact life is just tougher than all of us think it is. Who's the best contact hitter this year?
Oh.
Arise is still hitting over 300, but the OPS is very low. There's no one slapping it around hitting 320 right now, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the quickest way to find a good sort on this.
It used to be, it would be batting average, and if there's a guy just without pop that stands out.
Yeah, I'm just looking at batting average, trying to see what slugging percentages stick out. Ahmed Rosario is the first one that kind of fit. And even that, nope. He's slugging a good amount above his on base.
Tough to be a contact cat, man.
Luis Ariz, 14th in batting average, 379.
Yeah, he's
slug.
still doing
he's
it, but we've now expected him to win batting titles. Verdugo, supposed to be one of the better contact bats in the game. The hitting just hasn't clicked for him. Defensively, he was fine, and he got off to an okay start that I think expectations-wise he loses to Castellanos and Adolis. I also put Leody Taveras on here, so Rangers fans, he's my other honorable mention. Just a guy... Last year, the Leody Taveras conversation was always and look at this guy at the bottom of the Rangers lineup. Center fielder, young, talented, doing his switch hitting. Are you kidding me? Texas is full of riches. Not this year. And that's how the cookie crumbles. At DH, I'm going to put Mitch Garver there. Sorry, Seattle. Sorry, AL West, I guess. Man, this was one that didn't pass my sniff test in the nicest way to Mitch Garver, who has some really strong offensive stats from 21 to 2023. But the other thing that jumped out, the games played had been limited, whether injuries or catching or whatever it may be. For the Mariners to make him their DH move, thinking that the light bulb had fully gone on in his early 30s. That just doesn't happen a lot. That, again, the thing that I pointed to at the time, and I'm going to keep pointing to, Jock Peterson. Jock Peterson. What was Jock's contract? 1 for 14? I think Mitch got 2 for 24. I
believe there's funky option stuff. It's worth at least $12.5 million.
I mean, dude, that's where Garver's at.
I think its baseline is 1 for 9.5. I think that's buyout stuff that like he's guaranteed 12.5. But
Mitch is getting paid 12.5 this year. So that's one for me that you've seen Jock Peterson every year of his career. He's gone out and hit right-handed pitching. Some years at different levels, not a lot. Always good. That guy was out there, and you decided to go with the Mitch Garver. Maybe it's all clicked right now. Mid-30s, some injuries in there. So tough. Again, I don't want to rip into Mitch, but 167 batting average. 167 batting average.
165 OPS plus on Jock.
That's nuts, man.
I know they're like no lefties. The platoon's part of it, but you're gonna hit like that against the righties. I don't care.
Don't care. There's a lot of righties out there.
Drop him whenever the righty reliever comes in.
Go sign Hanser Alberto. He'll hit some lefties for you. We can find that guy. They exist. Dramatic. I put Josh Bell down. I know he just got traded to the Snakes, and he had a 2-homer day, so maybe he has a classic Josh Bell traded. Figures it out. But he was disappointing for Miami this year. They had a lot of disappointing stuff going on. And then, I mentioned Jeff McNeil with the second baseman just because it tied in well because we were talking Glaber. I had him listed as the util because, he still moves around a little bit. Who I was going to have as my backup second baseman, man, this is a guy whose name got thrown around in the offseason a lot. This is a guy Yankee fans were interested in, and I get these players confused sometimes. Nolan Gorman. Nolan Gorman on the interstate right now, 199. There's still some pop there. He's got his homers. He's got 19 on the season, so it's like, okay, Nolan Gorman, you're there. But coming off a year where he hit 27 homers, he had an 805 OPS, 679. He's 23 last year. Like, you think this guy was a prospect? You think the trajectory is going up? He went from cornerstone piece to now it's like, what are we doing? Another guy, 141 strikeouts, 33 walks. That's just, in the words of Mr. Girardi, it's not what you want.
38% strikeout.
Yeah, I mean, he's sneaking up on, he's 7 strikeouts away from last year's total and 100 plate appearances off.
He's always been, decently above 30% strikeout rate, but you figure that's the thing that even if the results weren't there for a year, you'd think working on that, you like to see that number come down. That makes you feel better about the long-term viability. But also, young players, sometimes a year like this happens.
1 year, there's a hole in your swing. Maybe he is hurt. Maybe it's something else. Maybe baseball's really hard. For whatever reason, pitchers always stink to do on any of these lists. The lineup's a lot more fun. I'm just going to list them quickly because I also, when I sorted these out to search, I did them by qualified, which means I'm definitely missing a few players. But it's funny. I guess players-wise, you don't miss out on a ton because it's a lot easier to be qualified there if you're playing semi-regularly even. The pitchers to hit the innings requirement is still like a problem that
I think we come out and it's like 20-something pitchers qualified.
It's been a discussion. Like more guys we need to open this up because pitching is just viewed differently. The 3 that really stood out for me, Kevin Gossman with the Blue Jays. I want to know what happened because he was like an ace of the game for a couple years there. He's been having a bad time. Marcus Stroman, who we've gotten to watch up close and personal and has fallen apart a little bit. Sinker, velo is down, the movement's down, bad combination. And then Miles Michaelis, who, I don't know. I don't know what Cardinals fans expect from him at this point, but his numbers unfortunately went toe-to-toe with the worst pitchers in the league. So, man, BBD, tell our socials team that graphic.
Graphic guy's on vacation.
Can't say all-disappointing team, but we'll say it here because we want to have the conversation with you guys, and hopefully their conversation ends in a couple weeks when we're circling back on guys finishing out their year. So, hey, thank you guys. I hope you're enjoying the Olympics and the baseball. Football is coming. Doing my fantasy draft this weekend? Sure. Hey, thank you guys, and thanks to Uncle Dan.
Talkin Jake is a production of Dan Patrick Productions, John Boy Media, and Workhouse Media.
Yeah.